Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Threadlings, a filmmaking guide, filmmaking journey, filmmaking production diary. I'm Miguel Ortega and this is Tran.
Hello, everyone.
So we're showing the making of an animated film in Unreal Engine. This is the project we're doing right now. The Threadlings, here it is. Here they are. And let's see. Give me 1 second. What's up, Marcus? So we're just going to be talking about the making of this and just show like weekly progress on what we're doing. So luckily I was able to jump back on 3D. So Tran has been kind of driving the train for the past few months. But this week I actually got a lot done. So one of the things that I've been working on quite a bit is, let me open it up here, is using Modeler to try to get some, let me see where it is, I think it's this one, to try to get some cool structures for where these moths live. So the basic concept, if you're tuning in for the first time, it's these like fabric creatures against the moths. That's overly simplified, but I wanted to try to do a set entirely in Adobe Modeler just to get a feel of it. So I did this in here, which is it's voxel based, and the reason why I wanted to do it in here is because I like the idea that I could just sculpt through things, like just punch holes wherever. So this is not a good piece that I'm about to show you, but you could see that on something like this, you could just grab your brush and just go into any part of this and just sculpt through it. And I think that that's pretty cool, especially when you're trying to do a very organic shape. So you can see it just eventually just rips a hole through it. And I thought that that was pretty cool. Like literally, it almost makes like a liquid effect on the other side, so then you do have to smooth that out. But I wanted something that was really organic for this stuff, so we went in there and did stuff like that. I'll show you some of the other ones. So,
And the topology is really, really clean. Like
mm,
you don't have like a lot of hidden, twisted
no,
merged
it
faces.
cleans that up.
Yeah, like if I've tried to do that in ZBrush because ZBrush can do something like that, but you get a lot of, you get a lot of stray artifacts, and you can't really retopo those things easily
What's up, Gary?
unless you find them and then clean them up.
That's right.
Which would be really hard to
Yeah.
do.
So we'll talk about some of the good and the bad. So this is call these the nuggets, and the idea with this is to put some of these into some of the holes in that thing. There's like these little guys here. So these are like hanging eggs, and you could definitely sculpt all of this in ZBrush, no doubt. But this is like a personal challenge. I just wanted to try doing it all in Modeler, and you'll never get the detail level that you will in ZBrush. So, like if you look at Geo Napkil's one of the ones who's using this a lot over at Adobe, and we love his work, and he does it to a certain point, and then he takes it into ZBrush. I don't even want to bring it into ZBrush because I want this. These are like background props, so they're not supposed to, be that amazing or hold up to that much scrutiny, rather. These are like some cylindrical pieces that I'll show you what they do in a moment. But the idea with these is they kind of plug in the holes that I'm putting into the walls. So it would look like there's something on the other side. So it doesn't just look like the set ends. It looks like, oh, wow, that keeps on going. So it looks kind of like a labyrinth of this nasty stuff. What's it called? Trifo, whatever.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, but it's the fear of holes. So that was a tunnel piece. So really thinking modular. So when you look at them individually, they none of them really look that cool. They look like a bunch of Swiss cheese or like some beehive structure. But you can see some of the cool things about this is like it does just go right through it. And some of the tunnels, like if you were to do this in ZBrush or Mudbox, you would push through this, but this would all be sheared geometry. This is actually going through it, and then you have enough resolution here to just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go in here and just keep pushing into this, right? You're not dealing with sheer geometry because you're dealing with voxels, so that's pretty awesome. So created just a ton of these things. Let me see if there's any other ones. Stalactite, hanging egg. This is another one.
It honestly looks really appealing to me when I saw you using it, because I was like,
Yeah, it's just so simple. I just love the simplicity of the interface. Like, I love that I'm like, okay, I don't really need this thing up on the top. I could just go, okay, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to scale this over here. Right? Just go to the eraser tool and then there, cut it up. And then if you go, you know what? Let's cut this part over here. There, it's cut. You know, it's so freaking simple. It's so intuitive. Or you could go to something like the sphere and say, you know what, I actually want this sphere to be inside of here so it looks like there's an egg in there. So you could just go, okay, let me just grab that, let me just grab that. And again, all of this stuff you could do in ZBrush, so this is not, don't be the, oh, you could do that in Blender guy. We know, but we're just trying new tools. That's what you have to do.
well, this tool looks really, really awesome. It looks super promising.
Yeah, so you just do that. You could just merge that together. And if I select that and just go to merge, like it is now one model. And now you could see it is Booleaned together ridiculously fast. So now you're like, okay, I want to smooth that out or whatever. You could do that. If you want to have radial geometry, you have it. You can see how many you want or whatever. Or if you just want to smooth this out, you could see.
It looks like so buttery.
It's so simple to use. That's what I like about it. So I want to keep trying to use it. So did that, basically went in and created all these different pieces. And then brought them all into Painter. I'll show you that.
So there's a question. Is this Blender GeoNodes? No, it's Adobe Substance Modeler, which we have not used for the record.
I'm not that Blender guy.
Thank you.
It's funny you said that because the minute you said Blender GeoNodes, I'm like, there's that other Blender guy. And then you're like, legal disclaimer. I'm not the legal guy, the Blender guy.
No,
So,
and then just disclaimer, we think Blender is awesome.
yeah, we think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So bringing these things in here into Painter, and I did these so sloppy because I knew that these were not going to be that visible. But you can see just really quickly trying to make this look as gross as possible.
It looks pretty cool.
It looks gross, which is all I cared about, right? So just making this look nasty and fleshy, and just bringing them in there and trying to get them to look cool. This one was pretty cool. This one doesn't look as good. The other one looks really cool.
I think that one's pretty cool.
It's all right. It needs more love. The berries is actually probably one of my favorite ones.
I like how you call it berries.
Yeah,
It's pretty gross berries.
but you know, they're pretty gross, and this looked like a brain, so I thought that was cool. And it looks like a strawberry brain alien thing. And I just made like a smart material, so I was able to just apply these onto all the other pieces really quickly. It's a little chandelier piece. This is another one.
Yeah, that's. I looked up the pronunciation. It's trypophobia.
Yeah.
That one gives me that.
So you see, they're just gross little pieces. They're not like beautifully textured, but it's enough for what I need. So once I have that, I was like, okay, now I could go in and, yes, very skin-like, and start laying this whole thing out inside of Unreal. So one of the problems was this. I'll tell you one of the issues. That one of the main pieces, let me just open that, is this guy here. Um, and this one probably, it's funny because when I'll show you what these things end up looking like. So this piece here needed to have the most amount of resolution. Modeler did not do a good job at creating UDIMs. And this texture here, you'll see in a minute, like it really didn't even need textures at the end. But I needed multiple UDIMs for this. I think this has like 12 UDIMs or something. Modeler could not create that. So then the problem is, this is a very big issue, is I was like, okay, I need to UV this somewhere else. UVing a very high resolution model that doesn't have a low resolution base was such a difficult pain in the ass that I ended up just having to retopologize this really quickly in Maya using this tool. I'll show you, called Quad Remesher. So if I bring in something like, let me just bring something in. I'll bring in something like this one, just as an example. So you can see the geometry super messed up. But if I go to my quad remesher, I could set this to not have symmetry necessarily, have this be 40,000. Press remesh it. This is a plugin I think we got off of Gumroad. So really awesome. Give it a second. And there you go. You can see it retopologizes it. It does a pretty good job. There's sometimes issues where it gets a little wonky, like here. And if that's an issue, you could just redo it again. You could just say, no, that's not what I want. Come back over here. Unhide it. Let's not keep it to adaptive quad count. Let's set the size to 40. Let's make it a little bit less dense. Remesh it again. You can see it doesn't like that area for whatever reason. So if you're fine with it, you could leave it. If not, you have to redo it. But you can see pretty good job, really quick, and it maintains the shape fairly quickly. So I did that initially for, not initially, I did that for that tunnel piece. And I then had to re-UV that. So I created the 4 or the 12 UDIMs and then reprojected it back in ZBrush. And that was the only way that I was able to get it in there. So you can see if you look really close, you'll see more stuff. I'm probably going to go back in here and tweak it. It looks better the closer you get.
Oh, it looks pretty good. I didn't know that it had that much detail.
Yeah, it has a ton of nasty detail.
It's gonna look good when you get close.
Yeah. So from far, it doesn't look like much, but you'll see the final results here when you put this all together. So I'll close this.
Is that pretty GPU heavy? The modeler?
Yeah. So here it is all together in Unreal, and you can see it looks pretty good.
It looks really nice. I like how it looks.
So has this really creepy vibe to it. What's the word again?
Trypophobia.
Trypophobia to the max, right? There's like holes within holes, holes everywhere. So we have our eggs hanging from the top. I want to try to get some, there's like some flicker going on here. That doesn't happen. It's probably because of the amount of programs I have open right now that are maxing out the graphics card. I'll close some of these. But I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. A lot of it is based on the lighting. I'm not going to lie. it almost looked exactly the same before I textured it, just because I had a lot of subsurface on this thing. Oh, it's really choppy on.
Oh,
There
it
it is.
was pretty good. Now it's good.
Okay,
It looks like yeah, it's taking a moment.
there it's playing pretty smooth, right?
Yeah, now it's playing smooth.
So you can see we have the eggs in the bottom. So what I want to try to get is some like liquidy, viscous stuff dripping. We're doing some tests on that right now. A friend of ours is actually volunteering to do some of that in Blender, by the way. So you Blender guys can get your kicks. And we have some water puddles or liquid puddles in the bottom. I'm going to try to put some more breakup into that. And then you can see that we have like a big cluster of like small eggs up on the top. And then there's like Niagara dust particles to make the whole thing feel a little bit grosser and more moist and nasty. So let's look at how this was all put together.
You have a question. Hey there, I'm unfamiliar with Substance 3D Modeler. Is it meant to be something like ZBrush or Maya? Let me show.
Like more like ZBrush.
Yeah.
It's basically like ZBrush or like Mudbox or like what's the name of the other program?
3D Coat.
3D Coat. So it's a voxel based. It's super simple to use. You still should learn ZBrush and Maya, but I just want to try to learn, a little bit of everything and see what is out there. So let's take a look at this and how this was built. Okay. So if I zoom out, you can see it feels kind of like a film set in the sense that once you break out of the camera, it all falls apart.
You gotta rotate a little bit slower.
Oh yeah. So you can see it's just basically nonsense. So these are the cylindrical pieces that we did before. So you can see. Okay. Kind of hard to see them there, but you can see they're basically being plugged into all the holes to give this feeling that this goes on in here. These guys are not textured at all. So all of this stuff that you're seeing there is just the subsurface and the geometry, which is giving a pretty cool effect. So you can see when I do that, it just plugs right in. And the lighting behind it is giving that really nice glow. You can see there's point lights behind each one of these. Same over here. And it's the exact same one, so I didn't even make variations. You can't even tell. Just rotate them.
It's
or
pretty
whatever.
cool.
Yeah. So pretty straightforward. The water is just a water plane. Just a card, essentially, with the refraction. Okay. We have all our egg pieces here up on the top. So this piece is basically duplicated over and over and over, even over here. The only exception is I had to create this piece here that acts as a divider. And I'll show you what that is. It's basically this piece here. And it's just two pieces.
Streams pretty fast when you put it in a wireframe.
Yeah, so it's definitely the graphics card.
Yeah. Well, it's hard on the graphics card.
Oh, and there's also water dripping. You can barely see it, but it's there.
It looks cool like that too.
Yeah, it looks really cool. So yeah, so this is just these two tunnel pieces duplicated and booleaned inside of Modeler. So that I could make a custom piece. So then they're boolean together. I cut out everything else, and then I just had to re-sculpt the little holes in this area here. That was easy. Probably took like 10 minutes, but it is the centerpiece in the back there, so it was very important that it was more of a custom piece. Let's see what else. So you can see our particles are there. Oh, I'll show you one other thing here. So let's go back over here.
You
Let's-
have a question. Is this a project scenario? Or it's an environment?
Well, what do you mean by project scenario? So all of this is for the film that we're making. So I guess it's a project, if that's what you meant. But you could see that piece right there. That is the only piece that is separate, and then over here, you're back to this exact same piece over and over and over. If I come over here and I load up cot, for example, so you can get an idea of the scale. So that'll be like the little character walking through the tunnel.
It's very cool.
And a little light that he might have.
You have a question. Can you do UVs with Substance 3D Modeler?
Yes, but they're not the greatest.
Oh, that was cool when you had that light.
So their light is going to be blue. That's why I made everything so orange. But there you go. You could kind of see what that environment looks like.
Oh, just pause it. There you go.
There you
Now
go.
it's streaming. It looks really neat. I like how it looks a lot.
How come I don't see any of the chats at all?
Because you got to hit the chat window. It's collapsed. So you don't see it.
No.
Just because I guess. Well, it's loading up now.
Okay.
Wow, and YouTube, this looks like a flash of blue light. I think you should just pause it.
Let me just pause it. So, yeah, so there you go. So that's the little blue light. That would be our little guy there. And all geometry. So there is normal maps, very high frequency normal maps there, but for the most part, you're getting all of that from real geometry. The other thing you can see is there's all these eggs up on the top here. So to do that, I ended up going to Maya. Let me just show you what I did. And it was this one here, I believe. This right here. Okay, so I wanted to have these eggs growing up on the top. So all I did is I just created a sphere and I just scaled it to more or less the size that I would want. So I was like, okay, something like this. I wanted them to look like this. They were more mature eggs, so it was okay if they were a little bit bigger. So that's fine. Then brought that back to 0. So it's now at 0, 0, 0. You can see the scale is much bigger now. So I'm going to go to delete history, freeze, transform, reset transformation. Okay? Then I just went to effects here. I went to mesh. I'm going to have my mesh editor here and my create mesh network. When I do that, I'm going to have 10 of these spheres. You can't see them right now, but they're there. So you can see there's 10 of them here. I duplicated it times 10. Okay? If I come over to the mesh distribute, what I ended up doing was setting the distribution type from linear to mesh, and then dragging the model into the input mesh. And when I do that, it's going to scatter that sphere across this geometry. You can see a one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. Okay, so they're all over there. I'm gonna set it to like 1,000 so we could see it a little bit better. Okay, but the problem is that then they start looking like they're kind of everywhere. And I know I didn't want that. I wanted them to only be up on the top, so they look like they're growing on the top, which makes it feel much nastier. So you can see over here, it changes it up, so it goes from the holes, and all of a sudden there's all these clusters of eggs up here. I wanted that feeling. So what I did, and I definitely don't have this down to a science, so I'm gonna probably fumble all over the place. But what I ended up doing is I went to my mesh again, and I created a visibility node, right? And under the visibility node, I set this to be in Z, I believe. Map helper, I loaded up strength map, and I just created a ramp. Okay, and when I did that, you can see that they're now just on this side. Okay, so that's not what I wanted, so it's not Z, it's X. Okay, and then I'm gonna go to the ramp and just basically reverse the order. And now you can see that the eggs are only up on the top. So just so you understand what is going on here, what it's doing when you set the visibility node to project axis, it's literally projecting a ramp. Let me see if I could open my Epic pen. Let's see if I can spell Epic. Second. Okay, right here. So what it's doing is picture a 3D projection, projecting the ramp with the texture, and the ramp basically going from black to white, and it's projecting it across this axis, which is your x-axis. So it's projecting the ramp across the entire model. It's going through the geometry, and that's why it's making it adjust from the top to the bottom. So if you come over here and you adjust this ramp, you are just adjusting the projection. So you can see you could bring this all the way down, and you could bring this all the way up. So pretty cool.
It's very cool.
You could do that. Then I could go back to my mesh distribute and say, I'm going to go to mesh here. I'm going to go to world. And I'm going to turn on my world node. And this slows down dramatically. So you can see that when I create the world node, all of a sudden everything disappears. So I have to pull this below the transparency, or the visibility, rather. So you have to control the order of this stuff. But you can see this is over here. And in the world, under cluster, you have these settings here that say minimum separation. And by adjusting this, you're going to make sure that they don't interpenetrate with each other. So you just have to play around with the radius variance and the collision. And that'll just make sure that they don't bump into each other all over the place. Points per cluster, I think I set this back to 1 because you can see that there's now like a cluster of them, a total of 10 per point, because it's ultimately just particles that are being spread across the surface. So I'll set this back to 1. And now there's going to be less and less interpenetration as you adjust this. Okay? There's still a little bit, but when you play with these settings, you'll get less and less interpenetration. And if you get a little bit, it's going to be fine because the lighting is fine. And then the last thing is I just basically went to the number of points at the end and then just cranked the crap out of that, so that I would have a ton more spheres than I probably needed.
Is it adjusting?
Yeah, it's adjusting. So the world node is slow because it's taking collisions into account. And again, I'm seeing some stuff there, so I'd have to mess around with the settings. The world node is fairly new to me, so I have to mess around with it. So don't take that as a tutorial. I'm just showing you how I got it to work, but I'd have to go in and mess with it definitely a lot more. So that's probably too many. So let me just set it to like 700.
You have a question. Is this film available to view online, or is it still in production? We're still in the middle of it, so you're watching the making of it live.
Yeah, the next Gnomon short film production will start with funding. Well, Unreal has been very, 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 very generous with us, so I don't think we're going to be affected by that much.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's your eggs and whatever. So now you could export this. So I could just grab this thing, for example, and export it. I probably need more, but whatever, you get the point. That's how I did it. Add more, reduce it, whatever. One of the things is you could see that these are all just basically spheres. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm going to just kind of do this as a test, but then I'm going to go back in and make up a higher quality model or break it up a little bit. And I actually did do that, and I didn't like how it looked. Neither did Tran, so I went back and I left it as a sphere, which I felt read the best up here. And when you look at like fish eggs or something, they're perfectly smooth. They're really great. So I might add some like normal map to them. There is normal maps actually, but a little bit more variation, but very little. I do like how perfectly smooth they look, but that was the thought that I had. If you wanted to do that, so let me just go over here and just turn this off for a second. So if you wanted to do that, you could still do it really, really easily by doing it on the original model. It's still directly connected, right? So I could go to modify, transform, for example, on this guy. Or what is it? Is it, let me go to model. I can go to, where is it? Right here to mesh transform, set the random to 1, press apply, and then I could just grab this here and you can see it'll randomize all the vertices. So I could have done that and then smooth that, and then you would get something that feels a little bit more broken up. If you're going to do that, you're going to get a nasty pinch here. So something that you might want to do instead is you might want to get a cube and smooth this out.
Yeah, that's smarter. Then you're going to have like a nicer topology.
So then you would get something like that, yeah. You could smooth that again, and then just go to mesh, edit mesh, blah, 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 where the hell is it, transform, press apply. Pull that, and you can see that you'll get a more uniform model. You smooth that out, and you'll get this more evenly divided and evenly gross thing.
It reminded me of a candy. I remember as a kid, there was a candy shaped like that, and I don't remember what it was, but it doesn't look gross.
Does this stream happen every week at this time? Yes, and we already finished our first film which won the jury award at SIGGRAPH, and it is doing pretty well at film festivals, actually. So, yeah, we already finished one, and it's done really well. It's called The Voice in the Hollow. You could look it up. And there's 100 hours worth of making of that one.
Yeah, and then
I mean, we go through the whole making of it.
yeah, and don't worry about. We always welcome questions. So if you're
Yeah.
new and you don't know, just ask. Just like what you're doing now, it's totally fine.
Yeah, ask. That's what we're here for. We're
Yeah,
not here to
that's the-
show off.
That's the point of the stream. Is we invite all questions.
Yeah, that's we are. This is for Gnomon, and Gnomon is a school. So if you already knew everything, you'd be teaching us. So
Yeah.
and the truth is, we don't even know what we're doing. We're figuring out all this stuff. Like I didn't know that you could do that transform distortion thing until this week.
I'm learning stuff too, watching you.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there you go. So mash all of those together, create this guy here.
You have a question. Can you share your lighting layout?
Yeah, totally. I'll show you how I light it. So I always light the same way, and I almost sound like a scratched record when I talk about this, but I'll show you in a second. I've said this a trillion times, but I'll just say it again. So you can see if I go into Google and I Google good cinematography, almost every one of these images that really stands out is going to have the same thing in common. So whether it's this image here, whether it's this image here, this image here, this image here, they all have the same thing in common. These beautiful, all of them are the same, and they're always lit from the back to the front, right? So all of these beautiful images. Remember, I didn't put backlit cinematography. I didn't put a specific cinematographer that picks a certain style of cinema. I just put good cinematography. And all these images all have the same thing in common. The brightest source of light is the furthest in the shot, right? All of them, right? So that's the same approach that I take over here. I'm like, okay, if I have to light this, how do I light this thing? So the first thing I always do, let's just hide all our lights here. So we're starting at basically nothing. These are fog cards, so I'll hide them. So first thing is I always start with lights coming in from the back to the front, right? So that's these guys here, which are two rectangle lights pumping in a bunch of light, right? So we see that from the camera. We get that. That sells a lot already, right? It also works to our advantage because we get to hide a bunch of stuff, but it looks more cinematic.
We also definitely have like macro look effect because
Yeah.
these guys are really tiny.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a minute. So start with that first, okay? So I'm like, okay, that already looks pretty kick-ass to me. I always start the lighting like this, from the back to the front, right? Is your character going to get silhouetted? Yes, and that's fine. Once you get into cinematography mode, you have to take off your modeler hat and you want to stop showing off the amazing pores you did. No one cares anymore, right? That's for ZBrush Central. That's where all the other modelers could, get excited over pores. Once you're doing a movie, no one gives a shit. So it's not about the detail. It's about just the final shot and the mood of it, right? So it doesn't matter if things go into silhouette. You can see all of this stuff here is dark, but you can still feel that there's a ton of detail. And that's what's important. Okay, so then I started putting in these little point lights strategically to backlight these little tunnel pieces. And that's this stuff over here. So let's see all our lights. And there's nothing to them. It's just regular point lights. You can see they're pretty strong, so they're up at 29 intensity.
Those look like chess pieces.
They look like chess pieces, they do.
Yeah. It's pretty cool on the outside.
So you can see they're pretty strong. The one thing that I will show you that I'm doing that makes a humongous difference is this. So if I come over here and I turn off my post effects, that's what I get. So what does the post effects ultimately mean? It means my environmental fog is doing a lot. The fog is doing a ton of work, right? But the fog is not, this is not the exact amount of fog that I'm naturally getting. What I'm doing is I'm selecting this light here. So let me just duplicate it and move it over to the side here. So that's a copy of it. And you can see that if I go to the actual light itself, the volumetric scattering intensity is set to 50, making it feel really kick-ass. And it looks like there's all this fog coming from that light source. It's completely over-cranked. The default is just 1. But by bringing it to 50, you can see it looks pretty kick-ass. Okay? These guys have it as well, but they're not as important because...
So their job is emitting fog.
Emitting fog. But of course, they're also lighting all of this stuff here.
But their fog intensity is really high.
But you can see without this, it doesn't look as cool.
Yeah.
Another thing, I think this is something that I don't even realize how helpful this has been by using Modeler. Whenever we use Megascan pieces, they're one-sided for the most part. So when they're one-sided, you have all kinds of light leaks. I have not had a single light leak issue here. Light leaks meaning that light literally like leaks through here, for example, and you're like, wait, why is light leaking through there? The model is closed. We get issues like that all the time. But this is a solid piece.
Yeah, that's
watertight. All of these are watertight. Even this right here is watertight, watertight. Everything is watertight. And I think that that's what's giving this really nice lighting. And you can see when you look at stuff like this, it looks like it's textured. Like Tran was asking me, how did I get this center to look a little bit darker? That's just me pushing in the geometry a little bit more in the center to get that shading. That's it. This is not textured at all. It's just from the shader. So the shader is doing all the work.
And just to emphasize, like when we did Voice in the Hollow, we used as much Megascans as we could. A lot of them are actually single-sided surfaces. Some are closed, but most of the meshes we used were single, meaning it was just like a plane that kind of wraps around. And there were lighting issues, like there were like lights like leaking through the surface, like literally just like cracks of light, and it would look it looks really bad. So.
Yeah, we had to constantly be like figuring out ways to block that. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things I definitely like about Modeler. You could of course do that in ZBrush as well, but again, what I like is that I'm punching a hole through the surface. It's closing it up automatically. So yeah, and again, this is just a test for myself. I want to do continue doing this set or the rest of the hive with Modeler just to see how it works. Yeah.
So
I actually don't have any.
Also, the other thing is like materials like subsurface scattering will react very differently on a surface that is closed versus a surface that is open. So however you model it really does affect the shader and the look that you're going to get. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. So in terms of shaders, they're pretty straightforward. Oh, let me just show you. This is kind of cool. Like, we wanted to see what like the moths would look like.
Quick comment. Here's a comment. Let me show some comments. I really like the early clip with the teal, blue, green tunnel. I like that too.
Yeah.
And then this one here, I gotta say something. I just quickly scrubbed through Voice in the Hall. It looks amazing. Visually stunning. Congrats on successful. Thank you for looking at it, but don't scrub through it. Please watch it when you have time. We really appreciate that.
So here it doesn't have, the moth has no shaders at all. but that's kind of the scale.
Can you hold that blue light like in one spot? Because it's really, on the stream it's very like jumpy. It looks really nice.
So the blue light is going to be emitting from cot like this. And the moths, that's like the perfect size for them. We wanted them to not be able to fly inside of these little caves. We know moths don't technically have hives like this, but we
But
don't
cloth
care.
people don't exist either.
Cloth people don't exist.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that's our little hive. So that's it. I'm pretty happy with it for a week of work. And like I said, all this stuff is texture here, but I'll show you something that's kind of funny. If I go to unlit, you can see how all of this here has the textures. The stuff back here, oh, it does have, it probably has like a wrong texture applied to it, and you can't even tell, which is kind of the point. Like, it's so shader based that when we had nothing on it, it still looked just as good. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Let me actually put the right shader on this. So I'll just put this. Let's just go to unlit. Oh, I know why. I know that's because this one has the proper UVs. So okay, I'll do that later. So I just have to do a whole job on this.
Oh, just swapping it out.
It's not a big deal. I can just delete that. Grab this one. Like that. You can see, so that's got the proper textures. Now you can't even tell the difference. Same thing here. I just have to duplicate those guys and put them over there. But that's it. So the last thing was the liquid that is dripping, and these are just like assets we've had from Voice in the Hollow days. And there's like dripping Niagara water that you barely see.
You know, it looks cool even like that. Like, I really feel, I mean, I didn't work on this wire. Miguel did it himself. But I'm really happy with how it looks. I think it looks good when it's dark. I think it looks good when it's lit,
Yeah.
which is really nice. So, and then I do think like in 5.3, lighting and with Lumina is much more stable. It looks so much nicer. It feels like very ray tracy, which existed in 5.0, but it just looks, something about it just responds better.
Yeah, what's cool, you can see right in the beginning, you could always see the water dripping in the back. So I got to figure out why it just kind of disappears. You see it back there? So when the sound design, I can't wait to do the sound design on this, very echoey, feeling humid and disgusting, and a lot of reverb and sounds in the distance. It's going to sound really kick-ass. And then as he's stepping, that it sounds almost like spongy. It's going to be really cool. So I can't wait to mess with the sound design on that. Oh, so shaders. Let's just go into that.
Well, couple questions here first. So, do we have a website for production company? Is it just two of us?
I already replied to that one.
Oh, you did.
So I put the thing. So yes, the production company, you could follow us here. And we do have a production company. It's called Half Empty Studios. Half Miguel, half Tran. And
Yeah.
we're pessimistic towards everything, so the glass is half empty. So that's us. And what else? Have you ever chosen Path Tracer? Yes, we did. So, Gary, when we did think that we were going to do the Threadlings entirely in Path Tracer.
Yeah.
And this is what happened when we were doing one character. It was like, oh yeah, for sure, this is amazing. We're going to do it in Path Tracer. And then the minute we started introducing an entire environment, and you're waiting 5 minutes for the scene to render, you start thinking, wait, what the hell is the point in this anymore? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the point in doing path tracer if I have to wait, or sorry, what's the point of doing real time if I have to wait 10 minutes to see a frame? So we started thinking this is not what makes Unreal fun. What makes Unreal fun is the fact that I could grab a light, position it, see it in real time. Great. So we tried it. I think we both really realized really quickly that we didn't want to wait for renders that long. And there's a difference between waiting 10 minutes for the final render quality and 10 minutes for just a preview, and that's what we didn't even want to go down that hole. We just wouldn't get it finished in time. So I think this looks pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like there are definitely nicer things about Path Tracer, particularly with like certain surfaces, like subsurface scattering and hair, but the environments didn't really look any better, and it just got slow. I feel like Lumen can do environments really well,
Yeah.
and it wasn't really worth it.
Yeah. So so in terms of the shaders, let's look at that.
And you have another comment. That scene is really, really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, okay, so I'll show you and I'll tell you the reality of the shaders because it's kind of funny. So the first shader that I set up, I think I set it up wrong, but it ended up being right because I kind of like how it looks better than the correct one.
I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's a different approach.
Sure. But so this is the base shader that I created. So this is the very, very first one. And this is using a very simplified subsurface setup where I'm basically just setting my shading model to subsurface and plugging in a subsurface color to it. Here are my individual maps from Substance, right? And they just have a multiply parameter so that I could darken them. The normal map has a regular flattened normal. So what does that even mean? I'll show you. So all that means is that that's going to allow me to, let me open this. It's going to allow me to like say, hey, my normal maps are too bumpy, flatten them out, make them flatter looking. So bumpy meaning like the little pores detail, make them flatter. The subsurface color, my diffuse color, which is just your color map, and it allows me to multiply it to darken it or brighten it. I didn't want it, I wanted it to be very light, and that's why I didn't care that much about the texturing side of it. I wanted the shader to do the majority of the work. So I tried to not put a lot of contrast into the textures. That's why they look kind of underdeveloped. They really, they're not anything fancy. But the more contrast I had, the less subsurface would come through. So I didn't want a lot of subsurface. So I just wanted some breakup. The normal, like I said, just has some very subtle detail. But again, we wanted it relatively smooth so it had that honeycomb feel to it. So this was the first one I set up, and this is the less technically advanced version. So by less technically advanced, meaning that it's not using a subsurface profile. A subsurface profile is going to give you much more control than just, hey, how much subsurface, or sorry, what subsurface color do you want? That's the only control I have here. That's what I used for a while, and then Tran was like, oh, you should use a subsurface profile. Subsurface profile gives a much nicer subsurfacey feel, and that was used for all of the eggs. So if I come over here and we look at these guys, they have a much stronger subsurface. So if I come over here and like create a light,
See, this thing looks pretty good at all angles. Like you're at a really weird angle, and it still looks pretty good.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you can see this really feels subsurfacey. I could crank up the normals on these guys, but you can see very subsurfacey, very nasty looking. Same thing with the little berries here. So these shaders are more advanced, and you can see it looks
I
like
would
they're.
hold. I would hold because it's jumpy.
These guys here definitely look like they have more subsurface to them. Uh,
Oh, there's a comment. It's good displacement is back in 5.3 nano as well. I didn't know you can displace again.
but you can see this guy as well. So very strong subsurface. And you can see this doesn't look amazing when you look at it up close. But that looks pretty good.
Yeah, but we're never going to really get like.
We're never going to get that close to it.
No. So.
Yeah. So these guys, these shaders are doing something a little bit more advanced. And I mean advanced for me because I try to, the minute I see the blueprint and shaders, I have a heart attack. But
I feel the same way.
yeah,
So.
it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that I'm using a subsurface profile. And the subsurface profile gives you this much more control. So you could play with the tint, you could play with the scale, and this kind of works like the Arnold or V-Ray scale. So it just gives you much more control. So that was created for the eggs and stuff like that. I tried plopping them onto all the other pieces because I'm like, oh, if that looks so good, that looks so much better, well, I'm going to put it on all of this stuff too. It's just going to look much better as well. But I was so far into the look of the set already that when I put that in there, it kind of broke everything. And I was like, you know what? I like how it looks. I'm just going to leave it alone. So I ended up leaving the more simplified subsurface for these guys and then the more advanced one for the eggs and whatever. So anyway, that's it. Oh, the last thing. So as you can see, this world is, they're fighting against moths. So needless to say, it's kind of a miniature world. So we want to have a very shallow depth of field. So if I go into my sequencer here, you could see that my current aperture is set to 0.2. I don't know if you could actually even buy a 0.2 aperture lens. I don't know if they even exist. I think like 0.8, 0.7 or something are maybe the lenses that were created by NASA that Stanley Kubrick ended up buying for, what is it, for Barry Lyndon. So those are like, he literally bought them off of NASA so that he could shoot in like low light photography with candles. I don't even think they go to 0.2. And those are for NASA, right?
Oh, how much? Do you know how much that was?
Probably a lot. But I know that they were at the Stanley Kubrick Museum and everything. Like they were literally made for the space shuttle. So a 0.2 lens doesn't even exist. So why would you want a 0.2 lens, right? The lower this number gets, your aperture, the more shallow the depth of field becomes. The more shallow the depth of field becomes, the more it looks like a miniature. So the problem for us is that we built all the characters as life-size characters because we had to do the cloth sim in Marvelous, and Marvelous does not like miniature clothing. So the problem, though, is once you bring in the models in here and they're life-size, it's very hard to mimic the look of a macro because it's kind of using the real-world scale. And even if you bring it down to 0.2, it doesn't get to become like macro level. And this is actually not the camera, it's this one here. It's 0.8, what I actually have. So you could see if I go even lower here, it starts getting like crazy macro level, right? So it's almost like insect photography.
It's really cool looking though.
Yeah.
So.
You can see you could, but normally you can't go this far with your f-stop. So just so you know, that was a big concern we had. We're like, crap, we just can't get that level of macro feel to it. So you have to do a few things in order to get that. the first thing you have to do is you have to go into your camera and you change your film back to basically be an IMAX 70 millimeter. That's going to give you much more shallow depth of field. And then the other thing that you have to do is you have to go to your minimum f-stop and set it to 0. That combination is going to allow you to push your f-stop to a much lower value, and it's going to give this macro feel. So you could only get that if you adjust those settings. Again, this is assuming you're working at the inaccurate scale. So where our cot is actually built like a 5 foot, 6 foot guy, but we want him to appear like he's 6 inches tall. So by doing that, you get that effect. Okay? It's not, you could call it a tilt shift, but it's not accurate because a tilt shift doesn't respect the actual depth. It just blurs across the edges, almost like a vignette. And it looks like it's a shallow depth of field, but there is no respect for the actual depth. So it's not totally a tilt shift. It is just kind of over cranking the f-stop. So anyway, that's my spiel. Question here, do we storyboard our shots? No, we don't storyboard anything. Everything we do is with motion mocap. Not so much on this one. We're going to have to do a lot of hand animation, but we do everything on set. So we get our storyboards are basically the script, and when we're in the stage, we just make sure we get the performance right on the day. Okay, so that's my spiel. Tran, do you want to take over? Does anybody have any questions on this before I move on? If not, I'm going to assume that's it. Okay?
All right. You can hear me, right?
Yeah. I don't see your screen, though.
I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. So, what I've done, it's not as cool as Miguel's stuff, is I've completed the model. So this is a new character. Once we came back, we have an additional character that's very important in our story. And right now his name's Zort, but we talk about changing his name possibly. But he is pretty much done as a model. The clothing here, if you look at this mesh, it is all triangulated because it's a marvelous mesh. And so the clothing will not be rigged. It will actually be simulated, so it doesn't get retoppled or anything like that. But they do have UVs, right? So I can actually UV inside of Marvelous, and then I can bring this into Substance. The rest of it is just all cleaned up, right? So we have proper topology, and then the hat was actually created in Marvelous, but it's actually retoppled. So this will actually be rigged. And a big part is because of the shape of this hat. So like, we really wanted to retain the shape, and it's really hard to do if you start simulating it. It's going to start flapping around and just looking kind of bad in ways that I wouldn't want it to look. Once I did all this stuff here, actually let me open up a previous version. I think it's this one. So I did a couple things, like, you know, I opened up his mouth a little bit to see his teeth. So he's got these little teeth. And he will look way cooler. And then here we're opening it a little bit wider to see what his teeth could look like. He looks really funny. But he will look way better once he's actually textured. These guys really need their textures big time because their models are so simple to look at.
He looks really cool.
Yeah, I hope he does. I brought him into Substance. I have not textured him yet. He has some just basic color. I just wanted to see, because it's hard to, when you look at Maya, you don't have any shadows or anything, and you don't have subsurface scattering or any of that stuff, and that stuff does change how anything looks, especially a character. So I just put like really basic subsurface, and I just kind of tinted him and got a feel of like, okay, this is what he looks like if there was lighting in some soft shadows and some subsurface. So he's, you know, I think we're pretty happy with him.
I love him.
He's not our main character, but he's the main character in his colony, in his own world.
He's like the Harry Potter of their colony.
Yeah, he's the Harry Potter. He's going to look much cooler once he's textured. So all these characters are very kind of tan, beige, gray in their color palette, like except for Mayo. He's like orange. And this guy is going to have a lot of red in him. So he's really going to punch out just visually, right? So you know that he's very important. And the one thing that is kind of different in his design is that he has like a high collared neck, right? You don't see the necks of really anyone else. Like, actually, I don't think anyone has a neck.
In this world, yeah.
Yeah, except for this guy. And he has a long neck. I know that's kind of a very weird design detail, but he has a neck, okay? And that makes him look a little bit different. And he is taller. So if I do a quick lineup, let's just import how these other characters look next to him. It'll take me just a second. So let me bring in the professor. So here's our professor with one arm. I'll bring in Cot. I'll just do default shading, so I don't have weird colors. And then I'll bring in Mayo. So Cot and Mayo, for those who are joining, or these are the two on our title page. You can see how they lined up in size. So Mayo is the smallest. This guy is very tall. Most of the students are around probably Cot's height, but he's special. His height does come from necks. You can see they don't have visible necks really.
Our inspiration for the design was really trying to go for like a 1980s Jim Henson puppety vibe. Obviously with much more articulation in the face, but that was really the main focus, was almost make this feel like a long lost Jim Henson movie that was barred from being released because it was too violent.
Yeah. Mayo is inspired by Beaker. I don't know if you watched The Muppets.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, but let's see if I can pull up a quick image. That's him.
So obviously it looks nothing like it.
Yeah.
But that was like the spirit animal.
Yeah. So just to zoom in so you can see. Yeah, we weren't trying to rip him off completely or anything, but yeah, he is very different when you see him, but he does have that kind of mouth.
Yeah.
And he does have kind of that color scheme.
He has a much more articulate face though than Beaker. Like Beaker literally just does this. This guy has a full range of expression, so he's gonna look nothing like him.
Yeah.
But for us, that was like our goal. It's like a Beaker. We wanted our heroes to be idiots, so yeah.
Well, they're not idiots, but like unlikely. Well, I guess they're viewed as idiots in their.
Viewed as idiots.
Yeah, but they're not. They're just viewed that way in their own society, right? Not as us as the audience, but
They're actually the smartest ones in the colony.
Yeah.
But they're looked at as they're the uncool kids. Is really what I meant.
Yeah. So they're like the underdogs, and this guy is the one I just created.
He's the cool kid.
He's the cool kid.
But he's the cool kid, not like the jock cool kid, but he's like the guy that like plays the guitar, but he doesn't play rock songs. He plays like Spanish songs, and then he paints better than everybody, and he likes
He's just
Kenny
like,
G.
He's just He's also exceptionally talented. He shines.
He's like the cool hippie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the lineup here, and
Yeah.
so one of the things I do a lot once I make the clothing, so you can see it in Marvelous, and this is actually a Marvelous mesh, meaning it's simulated. So I'll play this on loop. I guess loop button broke. But you can see, you know, how that looks. And for this one,
So what you're showing here is that it's that.
so the clothing
Yeah,
is made.
explain a little bit better what you're showing.
Okay. So the clothing is made, and once it's made, it goes through a lot of testing. So I'll just show you what it looks like.
And testing meaning that just because it looks cool doesn't mean we say, okay, that's it. It has to be able to be simulated or else it doesn't work.
Yeah. So you can see these are his geometry to support the shape of the head. So he looks really weird. But
So you did model that into the head? No, that's a separate piece.
yeah, that's a separate piece.
Yeah.
It's stitched. It's not part of the main mesh. But basically, you know, you make something like this and it looks fine and it's relaxed and it doesn't jiggle. Because you can make, for those who are new to Marvelous, you can make a piece of clothing and it never actually sims properly and it will like vibrate and shimmer and shake because it's not sewn correctly, right? So that's the first test. One, getting it to look the way you want, and two, not having it shimmer and shake. So it doesn't shimmer because if I hit this button, you don't see it doing that. But if you've used Marvelous, you know what I mean by it's shimmering and shaking. It literally, the pieces of the cloth will vibrate. Once I have something like that, the next thing I do is I go to Mixamo. And Mixamo is not where we make our rigs or anything, but I use it for as an auto rig, and then I use their mocap animation. Hold on, I'll pull it up.
Let me just say something to
Yeah.
this comment. So, sort of like a Fraggle Rock theme from Charlie, 100% like Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, it's totally Fraggle.
Yeah, that's been kind of like our goal. We're like, what if Fraggle Rock meets Alien? That's kind of our goal. It's Fraggle Rock meets Alien meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, so it'll have the violence of Alien, it'll have the scares of Alien, but it's in this world where these little guys live underground like Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, that's cool that that was stated. So right here, I've imported him in. So if you ever want to use the same pipeline as me, all you gotta do is set up an account. This is free. It's at mixamo.com. You can press the upload character, you just drag and drop this file in, and it's super easy to run the auto rig. It will rig it, and once it processes it, you'll have something like this. And you can just apply any animation. So I can apply this hip hop dance, right? And then what I do is I choose a different animation. So normally I would choose some kind of run, right? I don't need something like that, but a run is a pretty good test because
It's extreme.
it's very extreme. It's going really fast. There's a lot of changes from one frame to the next, and you want to test how that's going to sim. And then you have speed, so you're going to have a lot of stuff flapping around. I'll also test like just like standalones, like looking around. Something simple like this, because sometimes the clothing could sim really well on a run, and then when the character turns his head, it's like, nah, right? So there's something like that. And then I did another one, which was like, I don't know exactly where it is, but I did a kick, just because.
He kicks his head.
Yeah, just a kick, because that's really, tests a lot around the skirt. So this simulation test went better because on the first one, which was Caught, he was the first character that I was working on and doing the clothing. It went through a lot of really bad moments in simulation, so it had a lot of failed testing. So I've learned quite a bit, and surprisingly, this one was so much faster. So once I made this, I started getting the animation, and just to get into detail how that works. Basically, I'll hit the download button from Mixamo, right? So hit download, and it will ask you what do you want. I'll set it to 24 frames. It will be in FBX format, which works fine with me. And I'll open the file, or let's just import. Give me 1 second. Right. So let's bring in fast run.
Let me answer this question. Yes, that's exactly what we do. So the Mixamo rigs are basically just for testing the fabric before we actually get into rigging. That way we could see the animation. This thing's not going to be rigged for another month, right? But we don't want to hold up the production of the clothing, the texturing of the clothing while we wait for it to be rigged to realize, oh, we have to redo it. We have to undo the clothing and fix it. So now we know if it works with a bad rig, it's only going to work better with a proper rig.
Yeah. And it's really testing particularly how well the clothing in Marvelous was made. So
That's really
yeah,
only
that's
work.
all it is. So you can have a character look really good when they're standing still, and then the moment that animation is applied, the clothing will just explode. They'll trip and fall, or they'll fall off the character. I'll see if I can pull up something. But basically, once I have something like this, I'll bring this in, and then I'll grab this mesh here, and I will go to cache, and I'll export it as an Alembic. I will say Marvelous, you can import an FBX animation. It does not, it's very unstable to bring in an FBX animation. You really should just bring in an Alembic. Alembic is kind of like everything's baked down in the animation. And whereas I feel like when it's FBX, it's still there, and some shit goes wrong. I shouldn't say that. Something goes wrong, and it looks super messed up. So if you're gonna do this, I really recommend caching out Alembic. The second thing I'll do is I'll export frame 0, right? So I have this pose, and let's see if I can do it on here. So I'll export the first pose, which is frame 0, and I'm going to import that one stationary pose. Let's get him to the fast run. And then this will be brought in as a morph target, which is basically a blend shape. And then the morphing frame count is how many frames, so it's set to 99, by default it's 30, how many frames it has to blend. And you don't want this number to be short because you need as many frames as you can for the clothing to simulate. I'll press OK. And you can see now he is morphing into frame 1. And I have to do this because if I just import the Alembic in, the clothing will just be over. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. So this is a bug that happens in Marvelous, and it's happening since the earlier version. So you just saw it. So this is a bug where sometimes when I bring in the morph target, it will finish the simulation, and then it will snap back to the way it was before, and you saw what happened with the clothing. Let me do it again. Sorry. Let's wait.
That's a blooper.
Yeah. But that's actually a bug that's happening to me a lot. I've mentioned it, but it's still there. It's pretty bad. But the first time it happened, I freaked out. I was like, what? What's going on? Basically, when that happens, you just have to restart. And usually it doesn't happen the first instance that I load Marvelous. It usually happens when I'm doing it a second morph target, but it's happening on the first one. Let's do the same. Let's hope it doesn't snap back. But you can see how bad the clothing could look. Okay. And give it a moment. Okay, so it didn't snap back. Now, once I have it simmed, you don't want to put the animation right away. You want to continue simming it. So you can see that there's a little bit of whiplash, right? So it's built up this momentum, and you got to continue simming it until it's relaxed and the clothing doesn't have that whiplash. Otherwise, it's going to be, that momentum is going to be transferred into animation. It's going to look really weird. Once it's morphed into this pose, I'll now import the Alembic file. So import Alembic. And this one will have the full animation. You know, there might be a faster way to do this. I just got to figure it out. If, you know, I wish it didn't require 2 steps. Like, I wish it was like, bring in Alembic and it knows to morph. Yeah. Oops. I brought in the wrong thing. Give me 1 second. Let's bring fast run. Okay, there we are. And then I'll run the sim again, just to make sure it has time, because it's now a completely different mesh. And if you hit this arrow down here, I'll see my frame rate. Now, one of the things that's kind of annoying is in this later version, the default frame rate is 30 frames. We're not using 30 frames. We're using 24. You actually have to set this frame rate, the FPS, down here. I don't know how, can you hide our faces?
Yeah. If I hide it though.
There. Okay. So the frame rate is down here, FPS. It has to be, you have to set it first before importing the Alembic. Otherwise, you're going to have the wrong frame rate, which is going to totally screw you up. I'll just leave it for now. And then I'm going to set my simulation quality to animation. Let me just pull up a pen so I can circle these. Animation is just a higher quality. You don't want to do it at normal. It's not going to look good. So you just want to, it's a little bit slower, right? So set your frame rate here to 24.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? We're live now.
What is going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone.
That's so weird.
Yeah, that was weird.
Okay.
And then instead of hitting play, you just hit record. And what it will do is record the cloth simming. And that's it. It's pretty simple. Now, this guy worked out really well. I'll just stop that and I'll show you the result. And, you know, it's so much nicer that it didn't take me so long. Whereas the first character I did, I basically had so many failed tests, you know, you just kind of get a little bit better at it. Let's do real time. So here's a simple, he's just looking around. And you can see how bad that this works as a piece of cloth on the hat. Like, there's like this weird gap. But it was just good to see. And let me just open another one. This thing never remembers the directory. And I'll do that kick. This one's a really weird animation. But what it, you know, all these animations will. I think I just saved over it. No.
So we have a question. So is your workflow sculpt model ZBrush or 3D modeler, then import into Maya? Then you have to retopologize the character so that he's a production-ready model. Then it goes into Marvelous, Texture and Substance Painter, Rig in Maya, and then export to Unreal Engine. So you're just missing, Maya in between Marvelous and 3D and ZBrush.
Yeah, so it goes from ZBrush or modeler to Maya. And then the texturing is all the way at the very end.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be using Modeler for, or if I would use it for everything. This seems like a very particular use for it. Oh, I didn't show the whole hexagon create. I could show that once you're done.
Yeah. Let's see if I can load up some failed tests. I know I have quite a bit with. Give me a second. I'm actually not sure how failed this one is. But let's check. Yeah, this one's not that. This one seems fine. Well, you can go ahead and show it, and I can see if I can dig it up.
Okay, let me see if I can find. I think this is it. Okay. 1 second. All right, so while Tran shows that, I wanted to, so coming back to this piece, I wanted to try to find another solution to make more architectural stuff inside. Not to replace.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, it's because I got to press V or something. There we go. Okay. So back to this piece. So I wanted to try to find another solution to create secondary pieces or just weird geometry. Like that's really what I really want for some of this stuff is like weird alien type of stuff. So this is the retopologized piece before it's projected. So I'm just using this as an example. But I got this tool called the Voronoi Mesh Generator. And I really liked some of the stuff that it could do. So I'll just show you here. Let me just create like a sphere. And bring this over here. So you can see if I grab this guy, I could come over here and press generate Voronoi mesh. And when I do that, you could see that it changes the topology from this perfect kind of grid pattern into this, Voronoi pattern. So I could then grab this, right, select all the faces, and then go to extrude here. And under keep faces together, I could set it to 0, which I hate that that's not a setting that you could set before you do it, but whatever. Now I could just do this. Do it one more time to get a nice little bevel. And then I could just delete that, right? So now I have something like this. I could then extrude this again. So now it has a back face. And then if I smooth this, I would get these really alien looking type of structures, which then I could duplicate, rotate, duplicate, and you could get these really weird looking structures really quickly. What's really awesome about it is I could grab this piece that I've already done. So this is the main tunnel. And I could apply it to all of that. You can see it just applied it on the entire thing. So I could now just do that same process on that. So you could do it on anything. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty quick, really fast, I think.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to use this because what I like is the idea of like grabbing this and mixing this with modeler somehow, because I don't have to really care about beautiful topology because I'm going to bring everything in as nanite anyway. So I can just grab this stuff and like smash it into itself. Create these really weird shapes and then just make it feel like there's another part of the hive that has some kind of structure that just feels really alien and creepy or bridge that looks like it's made out of something like this, mixed with, you know, this stuff that we've already made. So I like the idea of combining this and that. So if you see a bridge or something, it would look like, oh, that's cool. It's different, but it all kind of is gonna feel like it's coming from the same world. So I think even if I grab this alone, like let's just try it just for the hell of it. I'm gonna just grab this and combine it, right? And I'll just bring this in here. And let's just go to export selection. And let's export it as an FBX. That tends to be what Unreal likes the most. Let's just see. So now if I came over here and I imported that guy, I probably should have smoothed it a few times now that I think about it, because this might look really polygonal.
It's kind of cool though. The distance you can't tell.
But you grab that, and then you throw in one of these subsurface shaders on it. It could look pretty cool. So let's try. So, kind of cool. I would definitely smooth it so you don't get those hard edges, and we could do that really quickly. We could just come back to this right here, and let's just go to mesh smooth. So pretty quick. Go back to that. And we could just re-import it.
I found like the blooper. Oh, there it is. I think it has a lot of potential.
It has a lot of potential, yeah.
It's going to save so much time. Like, I actually can't believe that Miguel managed to sculpt all that in like a week. Just all those holes.
Those are all hand sculpted,
yeah, it's a lot of work. So this is going to save time. I think that you still have to do stuff by hand, but this is going to save a lot of time.
Yeah, and again, this is to be like an addition to this. Like, I don't know, like what if like some of these gates, for example, like these holes had like a gate in front of it, right? Something that looked like it was blocking the entrance a little bit.
I don't know where that ball is.
Me neither.
Okay.
Let's push this up here, Alexa.
Yeah, it's cool. It's all sun, that's actually really neat. And you only have it as a sphere, like you didn't even like try to manipulate it or anything.
Yeah, but you could,
So-
you have something like, geez, I just have like no sense of space with this thing. But you see, like that could be kind of cool. So now you have this piece here.
And it changes up the structure. So you can have holes, and then you can have areas that have like kind of like these domes.
But
on
it
them.
still kind of feels like it's from the same world.
Yeah, totally.
And this probably would look better if I just would have done one single layer, so the silhouette would have read better. So, but anyway, that's another cool little thing. Do you want to keep showing?
Yeah, I mean it's just a blooper. So this was the professor before at one stage, right? And I have him ready into this pose, and this is like a previous version of his hat, and a previous version of his collar. He was actually quite difficult because he's got he's got a funny design. I don't know why I gave him this collar, but I did, and it looks kind of goofy, but okay. I can already tell from here that this is going to go bad. So when I made him, the skirt obviously wasn't touching the ground, but the moment, like I do want them to have, like we wanted them to have these longer robes, but the moment they run, the ropes become like an issue, and you'll see right here. Right, so it's like one flapping around everywhere, and he's like stepping on them, literally. Like his foot is on it. I'm surprised it didn't fall down. Actually, it is. So he's pulling his shirt down, and it's really flapping everywhere, and his hat is falling off too. It's like not holding, right? So it's starting to slip off. So all kinds of issues, and you can see like the skirt coming up and hitting itself, which is actually a problem. And you want to avoid that because when it smashes into itself, you can get like a bad interpenetration like this. So all this like crunchy bits. So this is one example of a sim going wrong, and that looks terrible. And that's because he's stepping on his skirt and the clothing is flying around too much. So, if you use Marvelous, you know what I mean if I'm saying like shimmering, and you know what I mean if I say, cloth crashing to each other. It's actually like literally behaves like that. So you get a lot of like nasty things like that. So it is kind of tricky to just try to make something that doesn't do this, and that's why it goes through this testing. And I think this last character, maybe it's because, the clothing is more simple, and I've just kind of failed a lot. And if you fail enough, you'll get better at it. So also, I realized this was a problem. Like, if he keeps running, I don't think he has any pants, right? So this character doesn't have pants. All of a sudden, you'll just see, like, things that you don't want to be seen. Like, that's his thigh. And it just will look really weird unintentionally. Right, so if let me open up the professor, or I'll open up like Cot. Cot is kind of much more well made because he goes through a lot. But see, this guy has pants. The professor has no pants for whatever reason. But anyway, and so this went out much better. Cot and the professor had a lot of fails in them. Pretty bad. And as it sims, it's only going to get worse. Normally, like in the experience I've had so far, you can see like the buttons are crashing and colliding, and then this is flapping up so much it's smashing into the sleeve, and then we just have all this nice collision issue or bad collision issue. But yeah, so these guys were really just took so much time. Obviously, if we just decided they're going to have the most simple clothing, it would be easiest, but you wouldn't have anything that we would actually like or be happy about. Other issues like that makes it more complex. So we have buttons, and when that's pulling out, this is pulling up, and then his skirt is really slipping down. So it's actually sinking lower and lower. So that's like the skirt line. But that's just an example. Anything you want to add?
No, that's it. That's all we got.
Yeah. So, you saw Miguel's cool stuff, and then...
Someone asked, what did you have to do to fix those issues?
Oh, you just have to change the design. Like, I guess the thing that's really nice about when you're doing your own project, you can say that design doesn't work. It's really problematic. So let's just change it. And the final change is not like so different that you can't tell that it looks completely different. It still has the same spirit, right? So I'll show some stages. Oh, that's an early stage. He doesn't have anything on. I probably changed the body too. I think I gave him too much of a belly at one point, and it was kind of weird, especially in the clothing. So, this was different stages, probably another failed version. I don't know why I didn't see that wasn't going to work. So, for us, because we are the filmmakers and we have control over what is the final, we can just change it until it actually works. You can see here, like, this is iteration 75. So I've failed a lot in the process of testing it. And what I mean by failed is just a simulation failed. So the final one, his skirt got much shorter. His coat is a little bit shorter. If we were working in production and that design was set in stone, it would be so expensive to make that design work. There would be so many things that if we were working for someone and they said this is the design and it cannot be changed, it would be so much more difficult. I don't even know what would happen. I think you'd have to have a simulation team and just someone focusing on making this guy's thing work. And it would take so long to get a simulation, right? Because you'd probably have so many trial and errors. And I mean simulating the previous version that wasn't working. So, and that becomes really expensive. It's super time consuming. One animation could take so long. And since Miguel and I are just doing our own thing, we can just make the choice like, yeah, let's not do that. And let's just change the design. And so that each simulation should only take as long as for Marvelous to run, and we shouldn't have to clean up or fix anything. So, this is the final one. It still has a spirit. You can still see that the collar is still here, that we still have this hat. He's still got these balls. I really wanted these like funny little things here. I just thought, his face was so cranky that this kind of collar plus these balls would be kind of cute. And then, of course, his skirt ended up being shorter, but it works out for the best. And yeah, he has no pants. So, and he's still got this cloak. And they are stitched and sewn together that when he runs, they won't flap and smash into other things. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. Does anybody have any last questions before we go? If not, you guys can follow our work on Instagram. That's usually where we post upcoming stuff, news and whatever.
Yeah, and we'll be back next week. So, and with an extra week of progress. So you guys are seeing things. For those who are joining for the first time, you will see things work and things not work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So check out our stuff, and thanks everybody. There's just somebody who wrote something. Thanks for all the cool stuff we showed. Thank you for watching, and yeah. So we'll see you guys. Let me see where this thing is at. Okay. So take care, and we're out of here. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. We'll be back next week.